I'm Miata in the Office of Christian Formation, and I'm here with my colleague Janet. And both of us work in the denominational offices in Louisville, but neither of us live there. I work remotely from Dallas when I'm not traveling, and Janet works from Sherman, Texas when she's not traveling. I think she has the view of the ocean this week.
Nice. Right here.
Right. She's in California this week. So this is an opportunity for us to make sure that you all are aware of new resources that are coming, and then for you all to ask any specific questions. And obviously we're talking about related to Christian formation, but that in its broadest sense. And we're also here to help, we like to say, connecting people to people and people to resources. And whatever that means, resources within the PC-U.S.A, obviously specifically, but we're all aware of all kinds of other resources ecumenically and are happy to connect and point to those. We have we have our quick sheets landing page, with the resources that we have developed with our various partners. And then we have wakelets of resource lists that are like curated resource lists, which include things from all different kinds of places on particular topics. So let's see, since there are just a couple of us, so let's remind me or tell me your all's settings. I mean, you said, let's see, so Sabrina, you're serving in an Episcopal church, and what's your role?
I'm volunteer, children's minister.
Excellent.
I spent 10.5 years in Oklahoma for the Diocese of Oklahoma as Christian formation.
Excellent.
So,
and you were at the diocese level?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Well, you know all kinds of resources and can point us to some too.
Well, I don't know about that. It changes and grows so much, so quickly. But yeah, when I retired, then I moved to Mobile. So I'm back in God's country.
Well, you know that folks just love having volunteers. That's the way we can all, so that's great for you to be able to serve that way. And then Andrea, remind me for you.
I'm in First Presbyterian Church of Cartersville, Georgia, northwest of Atlanta, and I'm director of children and youth ministries. But I also am on the faith development team, of course, and I'm also getting requests for adult curriculums and things along those lines. So they do. I try to get as much information as I can so I can share for all ages, for the betterment of the congregation, intergenerational things. So
absolutely. And so are the other places where there are more volunteers serving, or are there also staff people who also relate to adult or youth? Or
so there's not, I mean, our senior pastor partners with some of our I guess adult Sunday school class teachers and teams that teach. But as usual, there's one she's 92 and she's taught for 50 years. And she's open to new things, which is wonderful. So it's that type, that class is, when Jesus comes back again, that class will still meet the following Sunday type things.
Right, exactly. Know about those. Yep, we know about those. All right, well, okay, that's helpful as I'm sharing some resources and moving forward. And then y'all just stop and ask any questions as we go along. And then I'll share about, I've got a question to ask you all, and then I'll share about some resources. And then at the end, give you guys time to ask even more specific resource questions. But as we're talking about resources, if you have questions, let me know. So my gathering sort of question to pose to folks today was, what are some resources that you are planning on engaging with this summer? Like as you've thought about if you have some things that you're planning to use or to do this summer in your context, what's an example of one of those things? Just be curious to hear what people are thinking about or planning to do.
we do not offer Sunday school in the summer.
Sure.
But what they do, because for this congregation, it's important that children are having something. They run a Sunday fun day and ask different people in the parish who have some kind of craft or specialty if they would come and teach the children. So that's what we do. We've done rock painting, and we've done. I took a class, and I do clowning on the side, so I taught them how to make a kazoo and a musical kazoo, and of course that went over well. But you know, just things that they can do in that 30 minutes and then come back into church. So that's what they're planning.
Okay, so that's happening during worships and still happening on Sunday morning, but it's different from Sunday school. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's your summer. That's cool. Andrea?
That does sound wonderful, and I'd love to hear more about your gift of clowning. That sounds like something, you know, not everyone has, or it's rare to find. But I would love to have someone with those gifts in my congregation, because it's just amazing. So, we too do not have official Sunday school during this. Well, the adults do, or one of the adult classes goes again every Sunday, and one takes July off. But our kids do not. Our children's choir does not. We do have VBS. We typically use the Cokesbury curriculum, just because I don't have to change everything.
Right.
Yeah. So we're getting ready for that campfire lights. Been collecting Christmas trees since December to create a forest. We also go to Montreat 3 times because we again are in Georgia. We go to high school youth, middle school youth, and a music and worship for both kids and adults.
Oh, great.
So yeah, and we get a lot out of that, of course, personally, but also the curriculum, the small group resources, the liturgies. We just had Youth Sunday, and our 3 seniors wanted to use part of the liturgy from 2 years ago. So we do a lot of that, but we get a lot at Montreat as well. So, and we have various popsicles for preschoolers and various things throughout the summer. But nothing organized curriculum. Our adults will use the, what's it called? The one that's $85 a quarter. It's online. Tell me the curriculum.
That's online? Well,
it's delivered online. I order it every quarter for them.
Oh, the Present Word?
No, it's not that. Hold on.
Follow Me.
We use Follow Me, and it did not work in our context. We tried really hard. The adults liked it more than the kids, but the adults gave up on it. But it's the one, I don't know. I get all of the.
It's okay.
It'll come to me. But it's just sent out, or it's not sent out every week. There's, you know, weekly liturgy, or not liturgy, follows the lectionary and things like that.
Excellent. Oh, Feasting on the Word, maybe.
Feasting on the Word. Yes. Is that what? Yes. Thank you. That's exactly what it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, so it sounds like a variety of things, and you know, whether it's VBS or particularly you know, the events at Montreat and everything. I mean, you know, when you have concentrated faith formation time, right? I mean, I'm a big, massive proponent of camps and conference and those kinds of things, because you know, you get more hours of faith formation in that week than you have over an entire year of Sunday mornings or Saturdays or whatever, because you know, you have them for that time period built in, right? And you may only see somebody once every 6 weeks otherwise or something. So that's great. Great. Good to hear those things. Thank you for sharing. Let's see. If I'm thinking about some things that are like what's in season, kind of the things we talk about that are coming up. So we have, you know, in the Presbyterian Church, all kinds of special emphasis Sundays, right, on the Presbyterian planning calendar, that we and different congregations do or don't recognize those depending upon what works in their context and what has been their traditions and what they're involved in, faith formation, mission, outreach kinds of things. So our office is responsible for resources for liturgy and activities for 5 of those Sundays. And so the Presbyterian, the Camps and Conference Center Sunday, and all these resources, Sabrina, are things, that can be used obviously across different, just like we have used all kinds of things across, the Methodists, Episcopalians, the Lutherans, etc. So we have, things that for the Camp Sunday. Then we have Mr. Rogers Day in March, which is March 20th. And that's Mr. Rogers' birthday. And and then some churches do stuff in the summer on Mr. Rogers Day and use the resources then. So it doesn't really matter. But that one, I saw your faces light up. So I'm going to put that one, because that in the chat. Let's see. All right. I'm gonna, it's well, it won't come up live this way, I don't think, but the easiest way to remember it is peaceusa.org/mrogers. And so we have all kinds of resources, and some people have used these things in the summer or for take-home things. There's a worship service, there's a special hymn that was written, there are coloring sheets, including a coloring poster. You can print it out as a huge poster you could do as a joint project, or you got individual ones that you could, hand to people. There also is a building your neighborhood resource, which is like an intergenerational event you could do after church or someplace, about building a neighborhood. There are all kinds of other resources. There's a 4-week study on peacemaking in the family. There are all kinds of other activities. There's a link to a VBS curriculum from the past. So there are all kinds of Mr. Rogers resources, and him having been a Presbyterian pastor, he's one of those that we claim and is near and dear to our hearts. So, and then we come up, and the next one is Older Adult Month. And so an Older Adult Week. That's actually this week. It's the first week in May. And our partners, the Presbyterian Older Adult Ministries Network, we partner with them and create resources. Let's see, Janet, can you find that link quick? And so once again, it can be done anytime, but there are links also to liturgy ideas and ways to lift up our older adults and older adult ministry. And I'll talk a little bit more about a new resource from the Older Adult Ministry Network in a minute. So that's the first Sunday in May. Then we have August 4th, which the first Sunday in August, which is College and Young Adult Sunday. And there we partner with U.S.A. Collegiate Ministries, and we have resources, and there's a whole new set of resources that are updated from them that are not tied to any specific liturgy lectionary, or at least you can cover all 3 years of the lectionary. So there's liturgy material, but there also is like a quick sheet of like commissioning, service, and things that you could use either when kids are going off to college, to the military for their gap year. You could use, some of them might be appropriate to use now as you're coming into summer and kids are graduating. So there are all kinds of resources there as well. And like I said, some churches are using this when we're celebrating. Wait a second. That are celebrating in August. And then we come to the first week after Labor Day, so it's usually the second Sunday of September, which is Christian Formation Week. And so, depending upon your context, and if you do anything to kick off your fall, whatever that means, you may be looking for things to do for Rally Day, or things to think about in terms of Bible presentations, or there's an idea of how to start a children's at-home library with a group of people who from a church who decided on starting with toddlers, infants, they give a book every year through 6th grade, and the kids pick up that book. And so by the time they've gotten to 6th grade, they've kind of built a basic faith at home library. So there are all kinds of back to school blessing ideas for your backpacks and kids. So those you can find at that Christian Formation Week one she's dropping in the chat. And then I think she already put in, there's just a link to all of the different days that exist, you know, in all the different offices that are responsible for resources along this. So special emphasis days, it's just a quick way to get to some specific resources that may work into your calendar, but you may use it any time. So I wanted y'all to know about those. And let's see, in terms of, I'm going to take now a few minutes to talk about what's new. And the first set of things that I want to talk about what's new has to do with the Older Adult Ministries Network. So the Older Adult Ministries Network has just launched what they call Expressions of Older Adult Ministry. And it's a whole set of resources on their website. Okay, so scroll down a little bit. So it's got all these different kinds of pieces with it. And what's interesting is you could interact as an individual, or you could have a committee or a couple of volunteers if there were particular things you were interested in. So it's talking about older adults today, things to think about. There are a couple of short videos thinking about older adults, and then just click on the different page, the 4 different pages there. So guiding principles, like I said, is a series of videos with reflection questions from Joyce McKibben Walker, who has taught a class at Columbia Seminary related to the older adult certificate. So these are the topics, right? Ways to engage in older adult ministry. Then there's one on theology, and Sarah Erickson, who just retired from Columbia, is the one who wrote the theology piece. So once again, there's some video. If you scroll down farther, you'd see the videos that are embedded in the transcripts and questions. And then if you go to the third one, this is like where lots of nitty-gritty practical kinds of things are. So some of them are videos. So scroll down a little bit. So people sharing ways that older adult ministry is happening in their contexts, and some specific examples. There's a series of videos from millennial leaders who are pastors in churches with predominantly older adults, which is a really cool conversation. And then there are some quick sheets, which are some very specific topics like 10 ideas and tips for making hospital visits, or ways to start a care partner support group, or talking about loneliness, tips to address loneliness in older adults. And those are all free downloads. So all of these are free resources, and they are going to continue to add to them, but they launched this year. So people will be able to go back and find stuff all the time. And then there's an Explore More button, which connects you to some other resources from other partners, as well as things that they have created in the past. Some other activity kinds of sheets, connections to the certificate in older adult ministry, also the care partner toolkit they did with APSE, the Association of Presbyterian, Association of Partners in Christian Education, and then things related to our disability inclusion toolkit. And then on the Opening Doors to Discipleship website, there's also information about older adult ministry. So anyway, brand new, nice, neat new resource. So anybody who's involved or interested in older adult ministry. And it's kind of a far piece from where you all are, but at the end of this month, some of us will be in San Diego for an older adult ministries conference for a couple of days. So that's sort of that's one of the things that's new. And then the other big area of new things have to do with our Around the Table initiative that is part of our Lilly grant that we received that has to do with equipping parents and caregivers. And we have a lot of different things that are a part of that. And some of those, there are a few of those that are specific to PCUSA, right, Janet, in terms of like the cohorts specifically, but the resources are for, absolutely anybody. So if you go to the pcusa.org/around the table, that gets you to like finding all of the things that I'm going to talk about, and she'll drop that in. But there are a variety of resources and opportunities. So resource-wise, Flyaway Books is the children's imprint of Westminster John Knox Press and Presbyterian Publishing Corporation. And Flyaway Books has lots of amazing children's books and lots of picture books that can be used with adults too. So one of the things that we are partnering with them on is creating downloadable at-home guides to go with all of their books. So these might be things that you could send home. If you had the book, I was talking to somebody yesterday who said that she had created backpacks with a book and one of the downloadables and activities. And she had like 10 or 12 of these with different books, and people checked them out in the summers, like took home the backpack and it had the book and the at-home stuff and some activity ideas. I know some people who are, giving them to grandparents, those kinds of things. So there are 6 of those guides that are done now for 6 of the books. Oh, 4? Okay, there are 4 that are out, plus the Psalms of Wonder. So I guess there are 5. But the 2 new ones that just came out go with the books, the Bible stories, Who is My Neighbor and Who Counts? So those are, and they're in Spanish and English. That's the other thing. If you are working with anybody who are Spanish speakers, this is great as well, and some of those books are also available in Spanish. And then the Psalms of Wonder book, which is a beautiful book that a lot of adult groups are using as well. And there's a sermon, like ideas for a sermon series. You have access to the art to use in worship, all those kinds of things. That's another one of the books. And I'm not sure she's gonna add that link, because I don't think it's posted yet on that same page with those other guides. So that's a great resource. Another resource is a podcast, a podcast for parents, and most of these have been related to youth, and it's conversations around the table. And there have been 6 episodes in there, I think, or so, and they're going to keep adding them. And so the podcasts are, a really interesting thing as well to listen to or to share with your families. I'll put that one in while she's putting in something else there.
I got the podcast. I'm still working on the Psalms of Wonder.
Okay, great. There's the Psalms of Wonder. We got a lot of copies of those books and passed them out to everyone at Christmas. And now I can supplement. So when you said that, I found it. I'd search for it right away.
Okay, great. Yeah, I hadn't. Yeah. So, and that's just great materials. So many creative ways people are using that. We are having a community circle, and a community circle is just a 1-hour Zoom on a particular topic on May the 22nd for churches who want to learn more about the Around the Table initiative, and specifically the cohorts that are coming up. So one of the things that we are doing, just launched yesterday, was information about the test cohorts. So there are going to be a couple of ones for grandparents specifically, and a couple of just more general for congregations and faith communities cohorts that are going to happen. They're going to be happening this fall. And then next year we have the funds and the Lily to have a couple of waves of, I think, 20 to 25 different cohort groups. We're trying to get a diversity of folks. We're going to have several Spanish speaking cohorts. So those are going to be opportunities for churches to think about in their contexts, how they want to help equip and support parents and caregivers of all different kinds in various kinds of households, and think about it in their context as opposed to like having a prescribed program, right? And then there's a blog that you can subscribe to, and so Janet can put that in just to learn more about around the table resources. So for instance, Sabrina, if you subscribe to the blog, or if you just saved that that link to go look for, then you would know when there were new resources that were coming out. And this is a 5-year grant. And so there'll be stuff that'll be coming out in waves in next year. And we've got lots of good ideas. Who knows how much, where it's all going to fall. So, Janet, am I leaving anything out on the, I think that's pretty much it for the around the table stuff. Okay, great. Great. So then if we think about what's coming, more of those guides for the books from Flyaway. We are working on, as a part of this, also developing a like Advent candle lighting downloadable for families. There are lots of things out there, but there are people who are specifically looking for that. So that won't come out until the fall. We're getting contracted for writers and art. And so that will hopefully be in such a way that it can be easily downloaded and, put on cards and laminated, or maybe a booklet or something. It'll just be the 4 Sundays of Advent, Christmas, and Epiphany, and be really simple, and probably in such a way that either a church could provide some resources for an Advent wreath, or it'll include some simple suggestions. So it's not a lot of, and can be used. The idea for a lot of these resources is they can be used by a church that is sharing them with families, but also that these are all accessible to families who may not be part of a faith, a faith community, or who are looking. Then in September, we're going to have a community circle 1-hour Zoom specifically related to disability inclusion in our faith communities, and we have somebody now there'll be registration information up soon, but in the summer, but it's on September the 10th. And so we have 2 folks from Presbyterians for Disability Concerns who work in that field, who are also consultants for churches to help them think about both physical access, but also social access, and all kinds of ways to be more intentionally welcoming and inclusive. So that's some of the things that are coming. And then 2 other links, and then I'm going to see what kinds of questions you all have or things you're looking for. One is a link to our Wakelet, which is our bulletin board of all of our topics of resources. And this is the one that has, you can click on different subjects, and they're all curated lists. So these are not all Presbyterian by any means, but they're by topic. So there could be youth ministry, children's ministry, grief and children, small church. There are all kinds of them. And a lot of these were created based on previous Zoom gatherings that we've had on specific topics when people have been looking at them. The great thing about Wakelets is that they are dynamic, so you only need that one link, and from behind we can keep adding. So that's great there. And then Sabrina, just so you also know, then we have our peaceusa.org /quick sheets link, which is how you get to all of our resources that our office has created in partnership with other offices in the Peace USA, or with other organizations like the collegiate ministry people, the youth ministry people, the Christian educators, and so on. So I did lots of talking and threw a million things at you, but it's kind of what I do. So my question for you is, are there any of these you want to hear more about or have questions about, or what is a resource that you're looking for, or particular, like, oh, I'd love some support in this area? Anything. This is your time now.
And while you guys are thinking, I'm just going to remind you, Miata said this already, but everything that we put in here is free downloadable. The only exception is actually buying the Flyaway storybook to go with the free downloadable guide. But
good point. Thank you. Yep. Yeah. And, we see one of our, one of our missions, of course, is to help in all contexts, but, Sabrina, particularly the churches that only have volunteers, right? And ways to connect those. Or we have this small church circle going these days that is meeting several times. And so a lot of those are churches that, don't have a pastor, let alone an educator, right? So trying to make sure that they have access to those things too.
All right. I have a lot of dreams of things I'd like to have out in the world. And I
Yes.
understand you can't do it all in
Yes.
all the denominations. I do a lot. I was in an E.L.C.A. church for 8 years. So use a lot of, we use Spark House,
right.
curriculum for Sunday school because our teachers tend to love it. So I tend to pull from those. But something, of course, with the pandemic, we don't realize yet, not everyone anyways, how much it's changed our children and youth and affected them, and how that is going to be a lasting thing. This is the first big disruption in their lives, and it lasted more than just a one-day event.
Right.
It's continued. Again, we say post-pandemic, but it's still a huge part of who we are, but especially those kids. And I have a background in sociology as well as my MDiv. So I blend those together, and it's just, yes, there are good books and resources, but my parents are like, my kid's experiencing this, or said this, or this is going on with in their classrooms. And I'm like, I would love to have a resource to give to them to help them. And just, parent resources in general, not just relating to the pandemic and how it's affected and changed our kids and our youth. But we're starting up a new parents class, and you don't have to be a parent. It's kind of under 50 class type thing without putting an age limit on it. So I'm looking for resources to equip them as they rotate leading it. There's one person who's putting a schedule of leaders together, but not one person who's leading every week. But again, I do as much research as I can, and it's actively coming out and actively changing, so it's tough. So that's one of my big things.
Right. So, the first thing I would say is it sounds like the around the table cohort is definitely something that if you have the energy and you have the support from your congregation, you all should definitely be applying for. Whether that's, now the test cohort works a little differently than what the actual cohorts will be. Right, Janet? Let's make sure I'm saying this right. We're developing all of this now, but the test cohort is going to be sort of testing out the materials that are being created. And some of these materials that are being created have to do with exactly what you're talking about, equipping parents or connecting them to resources that exist on particular topics.
Sign me up for that one. Sneak my name into the list.
And I mean, I think on that information sheet, does it list what the key categories are, Janet? I'm not sure. And then the cohorts themselves would be you and one or two other people from your context, together with several other congregations, with a coach. And you all, over the course of whatever it is, 12 months, 18 months, I can't remember, you work together and you think about your specific context and how you and people and those and your families are engaging with these resources with you. And then you're tweaking things for how it works in your program. And then you also would end up with a little bit like a plan, and to have an intergenerational retreat at the end. So I do think that some of what you're talking about hopefully will happen in the context of this. And, along those lines, there will be individual Wakelet lists that are created for each of the topics that then could be sent to parents, or that could be used for a class and such. So that's in the early stages of development, but the test cohorts is part of that piece.
And when you read through the information sheet, it kind of talks, there's a little line that kind of talks about the difference between the test cohort and the initiative cohort. It's mainly the length of time and how many sessions, so just to determine if you want in on the test cohorts or to wait.
Right.
I'm very excited about the churches that have gotten Lilly grants for formation. I talked to some people in Louisiana about the same thing. How do we work with our children? And I cannot imagine the next 10 years or 5 years where all the good stuff is going to come out in all these churches. It's just amazing what we want to offer, and how it's just going to change what we do. So I'm very excited about how it's going to play out.
I agree. And just, there are like, what? There are 3 massive Lilly grants that each have like 70 grantees that are particularly in some way or another around this, this topic, whether it's the worship, whether it's worship, or whether it's, they're just all, the one that we have, and at least for us, because we're at the denominational level, and so much of what we're creating, the cohorts are related to U.S.A, but the other resources can be used for anyone. We don't see what we're doing as competition with anybody else, and we're pretty much not going to be creating stuff that we're selling, so we also will be able to partner and to recommend resources from some of these other places that are working on creating them, that may be focused only on early childhood, or maybe focused in this particular way. So I'm with you, Sabrina. It is very exciting, and hopefully there'll be enough tie into research and thinking about exactly what you were saying, Andrea, related to the pandemic. It's hard to keep up. So either of you have any other specific?
So we intentionally are trying to do a lot more intergenerational things, obviously worship, luncheons, things like that. A lot of our mission activities have changed to intergenerational, whether it's just a yard work day or an actual retreat or day away somewhere, things along those lines. But always open to more ideas for that, because again, those relationships between some of those older members of the congregation and some of our youngers are extremely important. But again, fostering those and lifting those up and forcing it to happen in loving ways where God's grace is present, of course. Always open for ideas of that.
Okay.
It's easy for people to, it's easy for parents of young kids to say, yes, that's something I can do, as well as, our 75-year-old retirees. They can both say yes to this, and it works. So, or it could work depending on your context and your congregation.
Right. So just in terms of what kinds of events you're thinking about, but I would point you to, there's several pieces in the Mr. Rogers stuff that are specifically intergenerational. Then there is we have an intergenerational formation page, which has a number of resources, including an emphasis related to intergenerational mission. So personally, in my previous life serving in local congregations, those were my loves. So 2 of my favorite things of all time were the intergenerational mission trip that we did, we would go usually not longer than 4 hours, because we had kids as young as age 4, and we'd go for 3 or 4 days. We usually stayed at a camper retreat center, someplace where we could live in community, cook together, do all the things, and then have a different mission projects with all generations together, and then also be learning about the justice issues around those things as well. So that's, and those are all kinds of ideas about ways to do that, including the organizations that tell you can't bring kids, and you always say, I don't take no for an answer, because you got to give me the reason. My guess is that these kids and these seniors will count to 30 more times than just a group of teenagers. Just saying. And then the other thing that I loved was I had a day camp at a retirement center. And that was an amazing thing that we did. And it was, and that's, something I can even just send some personal, like notes from. But we did it as a full day. We took them it was a small, not more than 20 kids. They were upper elementary kids. They spent the week. They did everything from, what you would assume in terms of, singing and doing art with folks on the dementia unit, or it might be eating in the dining hall with the independent living folks, and having to learn our manners at the table, and learning how to, because our kids aren't used to spending more than 10 minutes eating dinner or lunch often. Or learning from the gifts of the seniors. Sabrina, you were talking about how you have people in the summer who were sharing their gifts. We had the residents who shared, some talent, a gift they had with a group of kids. And so they got to teach them. We called them gifts hours. And so throughout the week, they had 3 or 4 times that a senior was with 3 or 4 kids, and they were knitting or baking cookies or doing woodworking or playing puzzles, whatever it was, doing jewelry. And then we had times where the kids learned about jobs and vocations, and we focused on different ones that happen at a retirement center. And so, one year they did PT, and one year they did the dietary in the kitchen, and one year they did nursing, and one year they did maintenance, they did laundry. They learned how to fill out a job application and did HR. So, and the staff loved being a part of that as well. And then this particular center, we were able to also help lead a Bible study or a morning worship. And then we had people who came in and taught the kids about different things related to the need, things that were going on with seniors. So like how to relate to people who have a hard time hearing or whatever. So that became a really neat thing. It takes a lot of work on the one up front in terms of building a relationship with a site. But if there's someplace in your area, and you can have a relationship with either the chaplain or the activities director, then if you happen to know anybody who lives there, right, then they get to help build that too. And you get to have and you can do that by starting with a day, right? We started with like Martin Luther King Day. We would go because it was the only day that all the kids in my school districts all had the same day off, and we would do a day, and then it built into that. So lots of ways.
I love that idea, and we actually already have close relationships with 2 centers in our town.
You do.
We have a Presbyterian PAWS, PAWS, where we take our well-behaved dogs and cats to those centers. And one of our church members, our young adults, she just got hired as the activities coordinator for one of the centers, and is figuring everything out first. And then inviting us in. So this actually might be perfect, and it makes me really happy and excited. Something we can work on and plan over the summer to get started come fall.
Well,
So-
right, and it's something where
Yeah.
you could do a, a half a day or a day or a couple of hours and build into something, say, for next summer, right? And there was a little bit of resistance at the beginning with a few residents trying to figure it out, right? But then, they were just so happy. And it was either people who were really involved and wanted to be right with the kids, or somebody who just was sitting in their chair in the hallway, but was so excited because I was apologizing as we were walking by or whatever. And the resident was like, no, this is amazing. I can't really participate the way I'd like to, but I miss sitting on my front porch and seeing kids in my neighborhood. So now I'm on my front, in other words, there are people here. And then learning from the residents and hearing their stories, we'd also have opportunities for the kids to learn about what those folks did, when either some interesting thing about their life, if they were and whatever, if they were a teacher or an engineer, or what kinds of a nurse, what kind of work that they did, or things about their families. So, yeah.
And I think that the job connection and sharing of those gifts could be great for our high schoolers or even middle schoolers to be a part of that too. It doesn't have to be the youngest of kids, again, especially
Correct. And
college isn't their next plan. What are some other options? We need.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Oh, right.
So
Yeah, I ended up having like youth helpers, right, who came and helped as part of that, and then they had other built other relationships with people. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And then just exploring what kinds of jobs are out there, right? And think we brainstorm, like, what are all the jobs you think it takes to run a retirement center, right? And then learn about how those all work. And it's a perfect place for a camp because you've got food, you've got adults, you've got a secure, you got a overall a secure area, right? And you've got medical care. So it's like works out well. All right, other questions, things you're looking for? Sabrina, anything on your mind? Are you?
Mine is very simple. We've had Vacation Bible School with our school before.
Uh-huh.
That's not going to happen this year.
Okay.
So right now I have 8 children.
Mm-hmm.
From going from 100 and plus to 8 children has been really hard, trying to figure out if we want to not do it or what's the best use of our resources and time. My biggest concern is there's no energy with 8 children. I mean,
Yeah. Do you have is there another church that you have a relationship with nearby that you could?
we asked, I sent letters out to all the Episcopal churches that are larger than us, and they don't have children. The ones that are larger than us have big programs, but whether I was to suggest, well, why don't we just go there instead of doing it here, that would not go well.
Right. No, I understand that. I was thinking about working together, not like sending.
Yeah, I've reached out to them. I'm working with the diocese here to try to, but we're just not getting the kids.
What about other denominations?
I reached out to the ELCA near my neighborhood and heard nothing. So, it either is they don't have any kids or I don't know what the deal is. But anyway, we're just kind of figuring it out. It's really a hard thing because I've always had huge numbers of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Sabrina, that happened to our Episcopal church literally across the street from us. And both of our congregations are in downtown Cartersville, which is not a big town, but everyone knows everyone and there's a closed school system. And they have been dwindling for about 5-6 years, and COVID changed things for them too. So this year they approached us knowing we had an after school program and a preschool where we draw families from. So they approached us and we are working in full partnership, financially, number wise, volunteer wise, full partnership. Most of it's on our campus, just based on size and parking availability, and things like that. But it's brought more life to ours, and ours wasn't necessarily dwindling by any means. But we're so excited for the new volunteers and the new gifts that they're bringing. You know, we haven't done music in a while, but they've got the music all set. Go outside, puppies. And they've never done science, and we have a wonderful mom who loves the science portion. So again, it's Episcopal and Presbyterians working in full partnership, and we're advertising it that way and everything. So I know you've researched it or, reached out, but maybe reach out for 2025 and see what can be done. But those 8 kids who are there, I promise you, they're going to love it, and they're going to hear God's message, and the Holy Spirit's going to be present, and God's going to be worshiped together. So even if it's 8 kids and 8 volunteers, I think that's wonderful for
And
this.
if it helps, and if it also helps those families for care that they need for their kids, then that's another reason to do it. If that's not necessarily necessary, then you could consider doing it in a different model, doing it, every Sunday night for 5 Sundays or something.
Yeah, that's on the plans for next year. And right now we're still debating whether we are going to run it or not. It just takes, y'all know how much energy it takes to put it together. And it's really kind of, it's disheartening to an extent, but, I reached out trying to think, well, that would be a great way to do it. And churches just either don't have the kids or aren't even considering it this year. So